So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Rajat Muna. So Rajat has been and continues to be a faculty member at IIT Kanpur, a professor there. But recently, for about 5 years now, he's been Director General of CDAC, based here in Pune. And arguably, this is the talk which is most directly aligned with the theme of the summit, Digital India, and CDAC has a major role to play. So without further ado, I'll just hand it over to Rajat.
Thank you, Mukundan. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It is good morning to all of you, first of all, and I'm thankful to the organizers for inviting me to talk about something related to Digital India and the standardization that I'm going to talk about. I think to start with, I'll make few statements which may sometimes be a little, dramatized, but then I would actually do that even at the cost of being on the receiving side, just to say what my theme is. First is, in the country, Indian software industry and Indian hardware industry has gradually evolved into a service industry. Now, when we are a service industry, we actually deliver products or we deliver projects for our clients somewhere outside. As a result, we end up following standards. But these are the standards which are not defined by us. These are the standards which may or may not be relevant for us. At the same time, if we look at the cultural issues, most of the time we actually work towards, not working towards the standards. And I'll define and I'll describe what the standards are. Just want to actually have a show of hand to somebody, some people who would have seen any kind of standards, any kind of ISO standard, BIS standards. And this itself shows that we have roughly about 10% of the people who are at this level, we are present here, have only looked at about 10%. And it's not that we are not contributing in certain aspects, in certain sectors. We have been contributing a lot in defining standards. In certain aspects, we are actually not contributing. But then if you look at it as a society, even when the roads are made and there are standards of the road, we know that the roads are not standardized, right? Even when buildings are made and there are standards for the buildings, we know that the buildings are not standardized. And even when the hardware is going to be the least of the issue to worry about, even when hardware and software are made, and even if there are standards, first of all, very few standards, but even when there are standards, adherence to standard is even more difficult to look for. So with that in context, I thought I will talk about what is Digital India, where we are, and what are we doing in terms of standardization, and why is there a need for standardization. Okay. So let us first look at the Digital India, and these are the slides, 4-5 slides, which I have had privilege of looking at it because being part of information technology and IT department, I have gone through various of these presentations and have access to them. These are basically few slides which I have copied, and these are available for anybody to copy or right on the government's website. You can just look into the NIC website and copy this or download this particular presentation. To start with the vision of Digital India, and we have been hearing a lot about Digital India. In public parlance, people are happy about there's something happening digitally, something in Digital India happening. But then I also see that there is a very little amount of understanding on what is Digital India and what it is aiming at. Digital India has effectively only 3 major top-level visions. Number 1, to provide digital infrastructure as a utility to everybody, right? Now, it's a small bullet item, but it has a large implication, and I'll expand this a little bit later. Governance and services on demand. So whenever I need any service or any governance issue or I want access to information or something, I need to look at that, and it should be available on demand. Now, various aspects here I will again unfold as I go along. But then this governance information for citizen perspective and information from policymaker perspective are two different things. From a citizen perspective, information is often translating into just looking into various kinds of databases, presenting certain kind of information and displaying it. So for example, if there is a service that I need to file something, income tax return, or need to file some request or something, all I as a citizen need to know is what is the status of my application, right? And have I gotten it or not? But from a policy perspective, at the back end, it actually gives a lot of insight into what we need to do, because data that we collect is humongous. And I'll give some examples right here. And digital empowerment of citizen. That means every citizen should be able to do things digitally, should be able to do things using digital devices, using mobile phones, using laptops, computers, tablets, whatever be the digital media. Now, with this in mind, let's look at these three visions unfolding. Infrastructure unity basically means we have seen in various cities the infrastructure, at least there is an availability of internet, right? Quality may be bad. Many times, you may not get a signal. In Pune, unless you are on Idea or Vodafone, you don't get any signal if you are on Airtel or whatever, right? I mean, many of us would have seen that. So there is an issue of internet. But then even here, and this we have been talking about for a long time, right from 80s, mid-80s, we have been talking about that internet must be the thing. Internet we must provide. We will continue to talk about it because whenever there is an internet available or whenever there is a network available, we have seen that our requirements grow exponentially, right? Now, in 80s, our requirement was only to be able to send emails, and today our requirements are very, very different. As we move on, our requirements are going to become even more and more different. We are already talking of 4G, 5G, 4G under deployment, 5G under implementation, and there is a work group which has been set up to look into 5G and beyond. But then the point is, high-speed internet is even today a bottleneck. And it's a bottleneck because there are many places where internet is not even there. To that extent, government is already talking about a project called BharatNet, or BharatNet, whatever you want to call it. The project it's basically, some of you might have been aware of National Optical Fiber Network. The idea was to connect every village via or through an optical fiber. This has been modified a little bit because National Optical Fiber Network at that point in time was designed to only provide connectivity, but there was nothing associated or behind that. But now it has been changed a little bit, and now we are talking of creating a bandwidth, okay? And bandwidth like a spectrum, people can be, it can be auctioned. So it's a government provided infrastructure, whether it is a optical fiber network or a high-speed RF link or whatever, depends on the territory. But then in various states this will be provided, and I think Andhra Pradesh has taken a major lead into this. Andhra Pradesh is doing a very good job in this, connecting every block and every village panchayat on an optical fiber network, which is not just singly connected but doubly connected, in the sense that there are a loop architecture. If one link actually gets cut because of the road work somewhere or something, the link will still be up. The second one is cradle to grave digital identity. All of we are aware of Aadhaar. This is effectively equivalent to Aadhaar and must provide a unique, lifelong, online and authenticatable identity. In the past, we have done several experiments, several things. Several identities were created, including PAN card and all that. There have been always issues, and I'm not saying that Aadhaar is free of issues. There are always issues. But then, by and large, Aadhaar database, keeping WhatsApp jokes aside, but Aadhaar database is by and large a database which is fairly accurate. right? And it provides citizen to be able to modify things, to be able to look into this. Based on Aadhaar, several projects have been already initiated, including a digital signature, where you can use your Aadhaar ID to sign a document. Mobile phone and bank accounts, Grameen or Jandan Yojana or Grameen phone and these kind of things, effectively to provide phone to everybody and bank account to everybody. So these things should be two major things which should be everybody's, available to everybody, right? So our Prime Minister and the government has generally been talking a lot about it, and we know about it. Easy access to Common Service Centre. Common Service Centres are centres which have been established in various places through which a citizen, is a public-private partnership organization, and citizen can go to Common Citizen Service Centres and then they can get variety of digital services. For example, caste certificates, date of birth certificate, health certificate, and in different places, different kinds of things are there. One success story of this was Me Seva of Andhra, right? I mean, the Me Seva is one such project of Common Citizen Centre. In fact, Common Citizen Centre has a route right into the Me Seva, but then various other projects got merged into that. Shareable private space on public cloud. Public cloud has been created. People can, and this is e-locker scheme. I don't know how many of you have actually used this, but you can now put all your documents, whether it is a certificate, diploma, or whatever kind of things into a public space. And when you apply for certain thing, all you need to do is just provide your Aadhaar ID and access to, access to recruiter or access to the government department who can then look into your database. Safe and secure cyberspace. With all this cyber space coming in picture, safety and cyber security is going to be a paramount importance. And that is something that we have been looking at, talking about it. The second vision was governance and services on demand. Services are provided by various departments. If you go to income tax department, provides income tax related thing. If you go to sales tax department, provides sales tax related thing. If you go to GST, it provides GST. Various, within the same ministry, various departments actually provide these services. The real problem is that there are no seamless integration. I mean, you go and type your name and Aadhaar number or whatever kind of details of PAN number or whatever on one side, go immediately to the second side, start the entire story all over again. Okay, go to the third one, then you start all over again. And then this data cannot be taken from here to there and so on and so forth. So can a seamless integration be done, which is irrespective of the jurisdiction? Okay, and to that extent, certain things have been done. Government has already set up what is known as National Service Delivery Gateways. So these are service delivery gateways, and departments can connect to that, and service providers can actually take services from this. One success story of this is Passport Seva project, right? Where one can apply for passports and all that right from this. But then much more can be done out of that. All citizen entitlement to be available on the cloud. I think this is an easier thing. Services digitally transformed for improving ease of doing business. So to that extent, e-signature has been already made available, but many more services are being made available. Making financial transactions electronic and cashless. Very recently, government has come out with a circular saying all the government payments can be made now electronically. Okay, and it is already there. In fact, government has been following it, at various levels to say that you must do this. Now, there are problems here. It's not that things don't come with problems, but then the fact that somebody can do this electronically, it actually saves or it makes life much easier. Leveraging GIS for decision support system and development, and this as a bullet item is a very, very important item. Probably we don't connect so much as a citizen, but we will connect very much with this as a policymaker. Using GIS for decision making, for policy making, I think it's a very, very important thing. Now, all of us are probably aware of Google as a GIS solution, right? And we probably are very proud of that because this solution provides a very good mechanism. You know, if I have to come to Infosys in phase 2 of Hinjewadi in this place, all I needed to do was turn on my Google map, right? I mean, and irrespective of which city I am, where I am, recently I went to a city which was my first time visit and I needed to go somewhere, I just turned on my Google map, right? How many of you have seen wrong information on Google map? Many of us, right? How many have seen no information on Google map? And this is actually a reality. Most of us sitting here probably don't see that because we only move around cities, right? Google actually has a very good database for cities, especially for A class and B class cities, but not smaller cities, definitely not villages, right? If you really need to find a village which is only about 3 kilometers away from Hinjewadi, you probably are not going to find that. And if you can find that village on the map, you definitely will not find a direction on how do we reach, how do we move to that place. Now, with that kind of a database, you really can't do much of decision making. Because for most of the governance purposes, our population is in the rural areas and they are not covered. This is actually a major challenge even today. Few map makers, for example, Map My India, you know, they are in Indian territory, probably have very good database, but then there are very few people who are available with that kind of a support. In fact, if you look at all the maps which are available, for example, if you look at the railway map available from railway, overlay it with the satellite map of Google, and you will find your railway tracks are way far off from where they are. You know, even on the map. At points, at places, you may actually find difference as large as 10 to 20 kilometers. So it is that bad a situation, right? One of our people in IIT Kanpur, we were working with railways, and what they did was they developed a gadget and they mounted on variety of trains. And trains, as they were moving around on the railway tracks, they collected this information. And then they created a GIS map. Not using satellite imagery, but using the real trains. And when we actually looked at this, with, you know, railways always publishes something known as trains at a glance, and it has a very good database. And you just map it onto that and you will find a huge database. In fact, stations are missing on that. It's like surprising, okay? In fact, even the railways did not know that they have a station. So the stations are lost, long lost. Now, the third vision was to provide infrastructure as a utility. Third vision was digital empowerment of citizen, universal digital literacy. You know, have people aware of digital things. Universally accessible digital resources. All documents and certificates, I already talked about this. Availability of digital resources and services in Indian languages. And I'm going to talk a little more because CDAC is expert in Indian languages, so I will talk a little bit more on that. Collaborating digital platform for participative governance. And that's another thing, so that every stakeholder, whether it's industry or citizen or whatever, can actually do, you know, this job is mammoth. Okay, so we need to do that. And portability of all entitlement through cloud. Now, entire Digital India is designed around 9 pillars. From the infrastructure viewpoint, broadband highways, you know, making every point accessible on broadband is a major thing. I'm told Reliance Jio is very soon going to actually, start offering these services all over the country for broadband. Reliance Jio has already been launched, but there are many other companies which have taken these kind of licenses. Universal access to phone. So phone is going to be your access device. And that I think people understand. Public internet access program. We are talking of free Wi-Fi, right? Smart cities. So these are going to be part of that. E-governance, providing governance through electronic media. E-Kranti, delivery of services. Now there's a difference between governance and delivery of services, right? Governance is all about providing information and doing it for policy making. Whereas electronic delivery of services mean that, if CBSE become electronic delivery service provider, then tomorrow onward you will not have 12th class certificates and 10th class certificates and mark sheets in physical form. They will only be available. Of course, you can always print it out for your own uses. Okay? Information for all. I think it goes without saying. Electronic manufacturing. Over the last 10-15 years, if you look at, our electronic manufacturing has become absolutely zero. Literally, we don't even make LEDs today. Right? Definitely, everybody uses LED TV. In fact, all your laptops that you're using have a LED back screen, backlight for your screen. But then, we don't even make LEDs. It's ridiculous. Right? Today, our total electronic manufacturing, which includes the assembling of TVs, you actually get CKDs, right? It stands at about, something like about $50 billion. Our need is expected to grow to something like $450 billion by the end of this decade. End of this decade, it is going to be, and it probably is already, because thanks to reduction in the oil prices, the figures are yet to come out, so we will know it. But it's likely that our electronic import has become now our number one import. If it is not, by 2020, it will definitely become number one import, okay, and not the oil. So electronic manufacturing is a need for us. It provides a lot of, if we can offset all our imports by local manufacturing, it will actually have a lot of value for us. And it will provide a lot of employment. It will provide a lot of manufacturing. It will provide a certain culture. IT for jobs. And there are a few early harvest programs, which were like school books, digital books, and these kind of things, and so on and so forth. So these were the 9 pillars of Digital India. Now, having said that, what are the challenges for Digital India? Inclusion. People have to be included into Digital India. Awareness, languages and tools, standards, and communication bandwidth. I will talk about inclusion, languages and tools, and standards. These 3 things, because other things are well understood. If you look at e-inclusion, probably everybody here actually is very much included in the digital domain, right? But then you look at various other sectors, various other category of people. Senior citizen. I remember, I was to go outside somewhere, okay, me and my wife, and we told our parents that we will not call you, right? You have to be on the internet. And that was the reason why they learned internet. But then, this is something which is, senior citizen actually find very, very hard to switch over to internet. And largely they are switching over because the kids and the youngsters are actually moving out and they need to talk, and phone is very expensive, right? Housewives, illiterates, physically or mentally challenged people, economically backward people, socially backward people. If you look at all these category of people, and in fact I have not included many others, but even if you look at these, there are so much to be included in the digital domain. Look at the standardization. I think one classic quote that I found is from Henry Ford, which says, quality is all about doing right things when nobody is looking at it. We do a very good job when our managers are looking at it and questioning, you are not doing this right. You must tell us why it is not right. Suddenly we go back and start doing things right? Quality is something that I think we must be all very much concerned about. We must all be sensitive about. Quality does not automatically means higher cost. In fact, often quality and standardization means lower cost, and I'll talk about this. In India, we have several books that have come out called Jugaad is an Innovation. Right? If you look at the Urdu word, the meaning of this Urdu word jugaad is basically somehow have the thing going, right? Now somehow have the thing going cannot be innovation, because innovation necessarily means that it should be repeatable. Innovation necessarily means that it should be reliable. If I actually have to connect a wire and twist two wires and put a tape around it, that is jugaad. That is not innovation. Even though the light might still work. But then 1 day later, 2 days later, when there is a spark there and a fire catches on, that is because there was no innovation. It was because jugaad. Jugaad is so Dr. Mashelkar actually says this. Jugaad is about getting less from less. Okay? You actually put smaller money, you get even a smaller value. Frugal engineering is about getting very high value from the less. And therefore, what he's saying is we must go for what is known as affordable excellence. Affordable excellence is the right thing that we should be looking at. Okay? And not jugaad. In our society, the focus on quality is generally low. In some of his last speeches, Dr. Abdul Kalam, while delivering the convocation speech at NIT Kurukshetra, talked about excellence is not by accident. It is a process where an individual or organization or nation continuously strive to better oneself. So it is not that excellence stops at one point in time. You continue to work on that. And it is not an accident. It is a design. It is a thinking. It is a method by which you reach to an excellence thing. Okay? For us today, being innovative is not a choice, but is a necessity. Why it is a necessity? Because if we are not being innovative, then we end up getting things from outside. Because we always look for quality. Right? I mean, who doesn't want a good quality mobile phone? Who doesn't want a phone which can last for 15 hours or 5 days on battery? It's our requirement, it's our demand. Right? But we don't do that. We don't do that. Instead, we actually import it. So, being innovative is a need for us. It's not a choice. Okay? Because if we don't do that, we will only be importing. Frugal engineering is about achieving more with fewer resources, and I will talk about, there's a very good book by Navi Redjau and Jaideep Prabhu saying frugal innovation, how to do more with less. Some examples. This, I don't know if some of you have seen this kind of a phrase, Chotu Cool. It's an innovation. Right? You can take this fridge, battery operated, go anywhere and it will work. Right? Very light. But you can actually keep your food and all that into that. Jaipur lag. Many of you must have been aware of this. It's another frugal engineering and an innovation. Right? Mobile banking. Right? In fact, one phone that almost all of us have seen is Nokia 1100. It actually was selling for 1100. Right? That was the frugal engineering. Today, of course, it is out of business. Okay? Solar light bulbs. This one. Right? Almost zero running cost. Tata Nano. Unfortunately, it never kicked because it was the cheap thing. Rather than it being projected as engineering marvel, it actually turned out to be something which was cheap, and people are not ready to buy cheap things. Okay? Grameen Bank of Bangladesh, Muhammad Yunus, right? Another frugal engineering. Now, in this particular part of the world, there have been a lot of excellent examples of frugal engineering. But then, what key motivation out of this is, a key point out of this is that standardization leads to innovation. Why? Because standard define interface between two subsystems. Subsystems may be sourced from multiple different sources. It leads to innovation. Okay? So one will need to talk about standardization. The standard lead to horizontal integration, inclusive innovation, cost-effective, manufacturability, right? Standardization leads to larger involvement of expertise, and that is what I'm kind of saying, all of us should actually work towards, because we are the thinkers, right? We have been doing quite a lot of work, quite a lot of research, but then if we actually work towards standardization, it is repeatable, it is deployable. One of the reasons why our research do not get onto this is because we don't define standard. We don't want people to actually go and start making products. That will happen. But we must need to define standards. Because once we define standard, we can actually ensure that such standards are to be met. And if they are met, then your research actually goes out of your lab. Standard leads to consistency, repeatability, process standardization, and maturity in processes. I will talk about a case study of SCOSTA where I was involved. This is a smart card operating system. It's now becoming a BIS standard. Many of you probably know about this driving license and vehicle registration certificates, which are smart card based, are SCOSTA based. We actually, it was something which we did at IIT Kanpur, right? But we did not stop at that. What we did was we actually took everybody along, academia, R&D labs, government, and industry. And a lot of people we actually took together, and therefore we defined this. It reduced the cost. Driving license at that point in time, world over, was being talked about for about $10, 600 rupees at that point in time. Came down to something like about 40 rupees. Less than $1. And today, these driving licenses are all available. This is vehicle registration certificate, ID cards, electronic passports. All of these are examples of this. Basically meant, and once we defined it, we were out of it, right? We are not running this as a business. People are actually coming and asking us, finding solution and all that. But today we are talking about SCOSTA being there almost in so many other places. There is a business standardization, and this is what I want to talk about. The products needs to comply to standard, and therefore there's a cost of standard certification. There is a business, and a lot of industries and a lot of countries actually do this business, right? Your standards or your certificate is valid for 1 year or 2 years. ISO 9000 is a classic example, right? Every year you go around for renovation of that's the innovation, okay? IP ownership. Today, when we look at iPhone, it costs about $200 to $300 to something like about $1,000, depending on which model you take. The cost of manufacturing, which is done in China mostly, is only about $50 to $60. Where do these $900 odd go? Right? That is the cost of design ownership. Apple gets that. And therefore, it is important to actually have IP ownership for ourselves. Large economies have benefited from standardization. Look at China. In fact, if you look at Japan, a generation above me would actually tell me that there was a time when nobody wanted to buy Japanese product because they were really bad in quality, right? Today, and our generation have gone through these calculators and these kind of things which are Japanese. Today, Japanese is a hallmark of standards, right? China, Singapore was a town of doing a very bad quality manufacturing in 50s and 60s. Okay, from there, they've gone on to the real business hub. So large economies have benefited. Can we invest our effort in standardization and certification? I think that's the message. The third aspect that I want to talk about was the language. In the country, only about 10% people are into English. And I'm not saying they can speak English or they can understand English, right? But they are the people with whom you can actually give some English website and they can make a sense out of it. For us in Digital India, as I said, we need languages in a major manner. And there are challenges here. Look at the language nuances. For example, if you look at this formation of words, there is a way you deliver, there is a way you render, and there is a way you store. And the storage format and the rendering format are independent things. As long as it was linear language like English, there was one-to-one correspondence. But here there is no one-to-one correspondence. Your storage order is like this, right? Whereas your delivery order is like this. And that's a big challenge. Okay? It requires changes in the displays, it requires changes in the way you input, it requires changes, and there are many other things. We need to standardize. Some of these have been standardized, but I think more importantly, these standardization also need to have a verifiability or a testability procedure and a certification mechanism, which doesn't exist today. There are languages which have one script, like Hindi, Marathi, and so on and so forth, Kashmiri, Dogri. And there are languages which have more than one script, right? Like Tulu, it is written in Kannada as well as in Devanagari. Like Santhali, which is written in Devanagari as well as another script called Olchiki. Okay? So there are languages which are written in more than one script, and there are scripts which are used by more than one languages. There are alternate forms. Like, for example, these three things are alternate forms of the same word, right? But then, how do you represent this? In order to represent this, your storage must have a different way. But in order to interpret this, in order to understand this, your storage requirement must be same, uniform across three, right? So there are classic problems of that nature. There are alternate spellings for the same word, right? And there are different input methods. InScript is a standard, which is a BIS standard. But then, I don't know whether it's a good enough standard for mobile devices. It was definitely a good standard for keyboards. So there is a work that needs to be done on that. Phonetic English, right? Another method of language. Again, if you look at the Malaysia long back adopted, Roman as a script. And today, every word in Malaysia has a standardized spelling, right? Whereas if we look at phonetic English and we download 4 different keyboards, every keyboard will have a different method of inputting the same text, right? So there need to be a standardization for that. There need to be a standardization for mobile keyboards. There need to be standardization on various kinds of things. In Indian languages, there are a number of things that we need to standardize. Keyboard layout, data storage layout, font layout, data storage codes are fortunately standardized in terms of Unicode. But then there is a certification method which is needed. And we need to see whether Microsoft Word is actually storing the data as it is supposed to do or not. There is a need to say whether OpenOffice is storing data in the format that is supposed to do or not, right? And there are very subtle points that come in, and therefore there needs to be a certification mechanism that is needed. Sorting order, need to standardize that. Phonetic equivalent needs to standardize that. Dictionary format, lexicon structures, layman terminology. All of these things we need to standardize. And many of us, IIIT in Hyderabad, various IITs, IIT Bombay, IIT Kanpur, all of these places, they have been working in languages for a long time. Can we come together forward and say, yes, we will define these standards and we will define these methods for certification. I can assure you that there are going to be agencies which will work with you. So academia, R&D, regulatory framework, and industry. 4 of us have to sit together to define these standards, take it forward, so that we know that subsequently we have the standard to follow. Otherwise, there's a lot of effort that goes around. Everybody does its own different thing. We don't define the standard. In fact, in software engineering, we are always taught that you must define, your standard document. At the same time, we ourselves do not follow it. Rarely it is followed. Okay, and whenever there is an opportunity, we would rather not like to do that. So I think I will skip this particular part. I've already talked about this. So standardization is the need for products. Focus on standardization is a cultural issue. And research bodies, practitioners, regulators, and industry need to work together for standardization. That is my message. With that, I come to the end of my talk. But just the last one, I want, again, a copied internet picture. We need to be absolutely sure that standard does not mean that everything will revolve to a single value. Okay? Because it's not a fair thing. Thank you.
Can we take some questions, sir? If there are questions from the audience?
Yeah, I can take the questions.
Yes, if there are questions from the audience, anybody? Yeah, there's one.
Great talk. So my talk is about the general vision which you outlaid for digital India. So the talk is not about my question is not about standardization, but the question I have is about education. So because we are here in academia, that's what bothers me. So is there any realization or is there any thought that to make this succeed, digital India, for the young minds to catch on to it, use it the best optimal way, we need to introduce or maybe change our school curriculum in computing. Is there any thought about that? Or I'm just putting this as a hypothesis.
I think it's a very valid point. I think education, and more so school education, is
in computer science.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. But in general, I think if you look at education and more so school education, there have been a lot of playing around that has happened. Okay? Education is one thing which is centuries old phenomena. It is not that education be suddenly decided today. One point that actually I see is leave the education to the educationist. They will actually come up with a solution. If computer science is the need, right, for the society, they will come out with that. Now, having said that, we have recently launched a program on National Mission on Supercomputing. One of the topics that we are looking at under this is education on supercomputing. And I have looked around with various other people, what is happening worldwide. Moscow State University, when we went, we were very impressed with that. Why? Because Moscow State University is few centuries old, I think more than 300 years old, close to 400 years old university. The first electronic digital computer actually came out from that place. It was a ternary number system. Today when we are looking at multinary or canary instead of binary just to reduce power, suddenly, we look at that. Ternary number system, -1, 0 and 1, has provided a mechanism to say net DC value will be 0. So net power consumption will be effectively 0. It was a possibility. But then the rest of it is history. Today we actually work with binary number system. Now, when we looked at it, they have done wonderfully well in introducing high performance computing. In their engineering education, in their academic education, everywhere, including in the sciences. And I was surprised when they actually gave me a presentation. They said they have been introducing this in high school as well as in the primary education. Now, one question would be, what do you do in primary education, that too with high performance computing? And this person actually gave me a few examples. They said that we play games. Okay, and while playing game, we actually tell them what is happening, what all things are actually happening in parallel. Okay, and they understand, and they write such codes. Some of us are probably witness to seeing, people from Russia and Belarus and all that. They are really excellent programmers, and I think this is the cultural issue. So you're right. I don't think there is much that is happening in terms of education, inclusion of computer science in education. But then there have been a lot of texts and a lot of places computer science is being taught in schools. But we all know it is all about mugging up rather than actually learning. And that is, I think, we can change.
So following on this comment, actually, I have a 9-year-old daughter. And that's where you come to learn all these things. So I've recently discovered an amazing tool. It's called Scratch.
Yes.
You will know here. So, I'm really impressed that I think, it is, and through that, my daughter now can code. She can make things move around. They get idea of loops and things like that. And when I went to the Scratch website, they define that today's literacy is if you don't know coding, you're illiterate.
Absolutely.
So if that's the level of seriousness, since you're laying out a vision for the country, and we're all the ACM people here, so is this something we need to discuss or something? My question was.
I think you are absolutely right. I think, yeah.
So this year, actually, Google India and ACM India, we actually ran a contest for school kids, and we got more than 400 submissions using exactly the tools you mentioned. And I don't know, the award winning, it's going on. I think the selection process is going on. So what you said is already on. There is a movement to go to CS in schools. Venki, you want to take up anything on problem? Yeah, you want to add to that?
Just one second.
Such tools. And so in Pune is one of the places we are starting it really. And yeah, so we're looking for people who are willing to contribute in, in any form.
Wonderful. I think that's a very,
So
you got the answer
Google
right
has
away.
given us a grant.
And say
Google
it
has
again?
given us a grant to spread programming in schools.
Right here, if you raise your hand and you want to be part of that, I raise my hand.
Yeah. So we are really looking for a lot of help. To spread it across the country is a huge challenge.
We have a sheet here, people who volunteer, please
Yeah.
put your names, contact numbers, and email. Okay?
So even if I get 10 volunteers, I think attending this whole 2-day session is well worth it for me.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sir?
Professor Nandi.
You just talk about the public clouds. We can store our documents and everything on public clouds. But how much secure they are? Because when we upload something on clouds and all the things, we are not sure how much secure. Maybe they will be misused by someone and all those things.
I think security is one thing which is the least understood phenomena. Now, let me tell you one thing. See, if people like us, people like me, if you actually talk to me, I would not even print, or I would, actually this is what I used to do. I never made my question paper on my computer connected to the internet, right? Now, having said this, a professor in computer science saying that we don't rely on the network, I think is saying a lot. But, but there are computer security issues are basically something which are least understood, okay? And it is also not understood in terms of the value that a security provisioning will provide in terms of the value that it is going to protect, okay? So for example, if somebody looks at my 10th class and 12th class certificate, I hardly care about it, right? But then, I may not care about it, somebody else may care about it. Now, having said that, the security on the digital cloud is not unmanaged security. There are managers of that. Cloud security is a very, very advanced thing. And it is not a public cloud in terms of cloud available for everybody. It's not an open source kind of a cloud, but it is a cloud public in terms of government-owned cloud. Okay? So it is a secure system. It is a secure mechanism, security infrastructure in place. But when you actually ask me how secure it is, unfortunately, I can't give you that it is 0.67 secure, right? Because there is no such parameter. And I also cannot say that in future there will not be an attack on it, right? So that is the short answer. But I think if you're talking to a security freak like me, I would not be able to give you an answer. But if you actually talk to people who really are the user, they will actually say it is secure enough.
Yeah. Rajuji, first of all, thank you. Excellent talk. It was very informative. I have two observations actually, and one question to you. This year, two great things happened. I don't know how many people experiencing that. All the KVs in India, they have made the fee payment completely transaction through digital device. Earlier, we had to actually go to a particular bank, somebody, either the father or mother, and stand in the queue and deposit the fee. So they have remarkably done this. Whether the other schools are doing this or not, I don't know, but all the KVs have done it. Another thing is JEE form, if you see, is completely gone digital this time. But the thing is, there are certain issues like uploading the image and then uploading the signature. So how easy it is for village people, because last week I read in the newspaper that this year JEE candidate number has fallen down by 1 lakh. So we'd like to make sure that it is not due to hurriedly implementing the digital things, because we have the habit sometimes we open up institution without having anything that admits student anywhere in the maxi arrangement. So in that process, we should not miss the real needy people who. Can you please throw in light that how many villages already have the optical fiber network laid down?
The answer is very few. Okay.
So that's the problem.
But let me also tell you about KV as well as JE, since you talked about it. I think it has been now mandated that every government supported or government organization like KV will do only online fees, including even IITs. The letters have been sent, and NITs, all government-supported institutes and all government-supported bodies will support online payment with the roadmap that they will completely switch over to online payment. And KB was one such example. They took an early lead into this. Now, having said that, coming to the JEE part, we were all very, I'm in the JEE Apex board, member of JEE Apex board. We were all very, and I actually do quite a lot for JEE. I mean, I have been involved with the CBSE as well as with IITs on defining on JEE procedures and all that. In fact, one of the report actually is attributed to me to say that we should do away with inclusion of board marks into the JEE procedures. But then, having said that, JEE, when we actually introduced this complete online, we were actually very, sensitive about will people be able to upload things and all that, especially from rural places and all that. And therefore, to that extent, we looked at the databases, saying how many people from rural area actually apply, right? And even
this year, the data that 1 lakh.
I'll come to that 1 lakh issue also. I mean, we have not done this analysis, but I'll come to that 1 lakh issue also. We looked at that. Very few people apply from rural areas. Okay. The need is to actually have more. Okay. Very few people actually used to apply even earlier. Okay. Then, even among those who were applying from rural areas, JEE is largely driven by coaching and training institutions, JEE preparation. And therefore, most of these kids would actually come out of their homes and stay in cities. Okay. And then we looked at it. We also created what is known as help centers. Right? So you could go to some of those schools where schools will help you in uploading all your forms. And it was all advertised in appropriate places, through schools and all that. The interesting part is not very many applications came through that channel, which means people did not need. Now, having said that, the numbers reducing, this trend is not today. This trend, the numbers have already peaked to at some level of about 1.6 million people writing JEE. And after that, the numbers have been reducing. Okay. It is not this year. It has been happening, for past few years. Largely because, we must have seen this report in the Times of India saying our engineering graduates are not employable, employment is at a low level and these kind of things. People are probably finding better opportunities than otherwise. So there are other opportunities springing up. So therefore, there are various other things which are actually relevant here, and it is not necessarily because of the digital inclusion.
That was my,
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure there may be lots of questions. I hope, Dr. Muna, you're available for lunch and people can get more of your insights and inputs. With that, Thank you again for a wonderful talk.